Modern Liberalism. Introduction. In this study session, we are going to discuss the circumstances that led to the development of modern liberalism as a tradition of ideas separate from classical liberalism, as well as the major principles or ideas associated with modern liberalism. Accordingly, the study session is divided into two sections. Section 1 deals with the reasons for the development of modern liberalism, and Section 2 with the principles associated with modern liberalism. When you have studied this session, you should be able to identify the reason or circumstances that influenced the development of modern liberalism. You should also be able to highlight the major principles and ideas associated with modern liberalism. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, classical liberalism and the ideas and policies closely associated with it were progressively modified. While classical liberalism was essentially an English phenomenon, modern or neoclassical liberalism has been prominent not only in Great Britain but also in Europe, the United States, and to some extent almost everywhere in the world. What factors were responsible for the development of modern liberalism? 1. The need to extend the gains of classical liberalism to lower classes. The success of classical liberalism had brought a number of privileges to the middle class or property owners. But the same privileges did not adequately cater for the interests of the poor and weak, particularly peasants, workers, women, and children. The need to provide effective liberty for these underprivileged groups seemed to require a modification of classical liberal theory. 2. The need for liberalism to accommodate new theories of man and society. The 19th century witnessed the development of new theories of man and his relationship to society, such as socialism and democracy. Socialists and Democrats, for example, argued that if government was based on the consent of the people, then it was only reasonable that government should use its powers to improve the conditions of the majority of people who remained poor and exploited. Liberalism could not ignore these ideas and had to embrace them in order to retain its former revolutionary character. 3. The need to abandon individualism. Classical liberal theory had tended to emphasize the individual as an isolated human being and to ignore the extent of interaction and interdependence among people. The growth of cities, the expansion of industry, and the development of worldwide commerce made the emphasis of classical liberalism on individualism outdated. To cope with these developments, liberalism had to be less individualistic and more socially oriented. 4. The realization that government action was necessary to promote liberty among the underprivileged. Classical liberalism sought to limit the powers of government in order to promote the liberty of the individual. But in the 19th and 20th centuries, it became increasingly obvious that the absence of government regulation had led to the oppression of the majority by the few privileged property owners. The system of private ownership of property without government regulation seemed to concentrate wealth in the hands of fewer and fewer people and to impoverish the majority. Wages were kept low, hours of work were long, and women and children were exploited. It became obvious that government had to intervene to introduce social reforms that would help the poor and the weak to achieve their liberty. Given these factors, it was not surprising that as from the early 20th century, modern liberalism became a most powerful influence on governments. Indeed, in virtually all countries of the world today, government intervention in social life has become a major means through which citizens are given greater opportunity for self-development. Principles of modern liberalism. In the previous section, we discussed the reasons for the development of modern liberalism. In this section, we shall identify the major ideas or principles associated with modern liberalism. Government as a supporter and promoter of liberty. Modern liberals believe that government should take positive steps to maximize happiness in society by improving social conditions in the society and helping disadvantaged individuals and groups to overcome their problems. Modern liberals argue that government should assume responsibility for the material well-being of citizens, majority of whom are weak and exploited. Rejection of natural law. Most modern liberals do not believe in the concept of natural law. They believe that there were no eternal or unchanging rules in nature by which people should govern their conduct. The value of any policy or law in society, they argue, should only be measured by the amount of happiness it brings to the majority of people or the society as a whole. Therefore, a good policy or law is one that brings the greatest happiness to the greatest number of people. Rejection of free enterprise economy without government regulation. Modern liberals believe that the philosophy of government non-intervention in the economy had benefited only a few privileged property owners and led to the oppression of the weak. Modern liberals, therefore, favor active government regulation of the economy, or government ownership and control of economic activities that affect the lives of the majority of the people. Rejection of government activities that do not promote human liberty. While modern liberals argue for greater government intervention and action to promote liberty in society, they do not want government to become so powerful that it will become oppressive. Government should only act when its action will definitely increase the freedom of the people and promote their happiness. Belief in social engineering. Modern liberals argue that existing institutions could be adjusted or modified and new institutions created to increase happiness in society. They argue that people should not only be able to modify or replace institutions that oppress them, but that they should also be able to go further by creating new institutions that will increase their happiness. This process of adjusting and creating institutions to increase happiness in society is what modern liberals meant by social engineering. Now, read the short excerpt below and answer the question that follows. Most people have argued that given its emphasis on government intervention in social life to promote the welfare of the majority of citizens, Modern liberalism is no longer liberal and has instead become a version of socialism, which is an ideology that supports government ownership and control of the economy. But there are at least three reasons why modern liberalism should be seen as an extension of classical liberalism, rather than a complete departure from it or a version of socialism. First, modern liberalism is committed to the same goal of a free individual that guided the thinking of classical liberals. The means to that goal have been changed by modern liberals who, unlike classical liberals, emphasize positive government action, but the end remains the same. Second, the changes in method and policy usually associated with modern liberalism, such as provision of education and laws protecting women and children, have enhanced individual freedom and liberty. Third, the constitutional rights that were highly valued by classical liberals, such as a government by popular consent and the legislature's right to make policies, have also been supported and protected by modern liberal governments. Modern liberalism has remained liberal, and it has helped to enrich the quality of liberalism as it was known by the classical liberals. Do you agree with this writer? Can you highlight some of the important differences between classical liberalism and modern liberalism? Can you also note areas of agreement between the two? Submit your response to your tutor at the course website. Study session summary. Modern liberalism emerged because of new developments in political theory and practice, which made a revision of classical liberalism necessary. While there are significant differences between the two, it is important to note that they share the same commitment to the goal of a free individual. Indeed, rather than interpreting modern liberalism as a departure from classical liberalism, it is better to say it is an extension of the ideas of classical liberalism to hitherto neglected groups in the society. We have now come to the end of study session 6. Thank you for listening.